In this section, we'll talk about Amazon databases. There's many different databases to choose from, and each one has a unique property. Let's go through some of the main characteristics of these databases. To start with, we have Amazon Aurora, which is a Amazon offering that has highly clustered systems that are fully managed for you. And so this is a good option for companies that traditionally would maybe manage their own SQL services, and it's backwards compatible with things like Postgres and also with MySQL. So these are really interesting and highly available clustered versions of what you typically would run in a software engineering company. REDSHIFT is a data warehouse, and this data warehouse is able to do petabyte scale counts. So you can do, let's say, I want to see how many visits to my website over the last 10 years. That would be a good type of a query for Amazon REDSHIFT. And Amazon DynamoDB is a key value based database. And it's really similar to, let's say, something like MongoDB or even a Python dictionary, where you put a key in, you have a value, and it's very good for low latency queries. So it's very different than a SQL database, which is traditionally used for things like transactions or financial operations, where with something like DynamoDB, you would just use it for very simple key value based queries. Elasticache is another offering that offers the ability to do things like extremely low latency queries or caching. And so you'll often use this for a layer for something like maybe you want to cache your recommendation engine results or cache some kind of query that takes a long time, maybe hours to run. Instead, you put that data into a cache. And then as a result, you're able to get this extremely low latency database. Another one is Amazon Neptune. So this is a graph-based database. And so what are some use cases for a graph-based database? So social network analysis is one of the primary ones. And there's some commercial offerings that are very similar. And Neo4j is one of those examples that could be very similar to Amazon Neptune. So it really depends on what kind of problem you're trying to solve. You'll want to select the right database for the right problem you solve. And Amazon makes it very simple to do this. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do with a Amazon storage overview here. So if we get into this storage overview, one of the things that we can look at is that we may want to decide between doing some of this ourselves, and these are all managed services, or do we want to go through and look at something that's an unmanaged service? So let's look at the breakdown of the difference between a managed and an unmanaged service. So the difference is that with a unmanaged service, you're responsible for things like the load, for example, for errors. You're responsible for backing it up. And so it's up to you when you're doing this managed service to actually also manage things like scaling. So a lot of the responsibility is pushed onto you. So you can do this. You can basically handle the scaling, the fault tolerance, if you have the skills to do this. Otherwise, you may want to move over to a managed offering, like, for example, the RDS service. In that case, you have backups are built into it. You have encryption is built into it. You have the clustering is built into it. And those are all things that you can get by using this managed service. So this is really something where if the skill level is very, very high, that may be something that your company would want to actually figure out. And if you actually want to hire up and be an expert on something like this. But for many cases, really this managed offering is going to be the solution that someone's going to want to go towards. So let's go through and look at some of the things that you would want to look at in terms of a relational database. So in a nutshell, with something like RDS, that's a fully managed service, you'd want to make sure that you're able to use all the capabilities that it offers. It has the ability to access it via the console. And that's usually how people operate initially with using the Amazon RDS service. It also has access via CLI. or even an API call. And there's even serverless versions of RDS as well. So another option is that you can use it as more of a database service that's fully managed like DynamoDB. It also has the ability to have both scalable compute and scalable storage. So I've actually used this in the past where I've had really severe problems with scalability, and I've pressed a button and I've scaled up my database, both the compute and the storage, even in the situation where it's under high load. And that's something that's built into it. And if you had to do that without that automatic scalability, it would be very painful. It also, RDS has the ability to do automated backups as well. So that's one of the huge capabilities that it has. And it also has the ability to span across multiple AZs or availability zones. So you can have the master component here and the slave component here, and it can automatically replicate. And so some of the things that it supports are Aurora, Postgres, we talked about that, MySQL. Also, it has support for Oracle and also SQL Server. So these are all capabilities that you're going to get by using the managed relational database service. So speaking of Aurora, let's talk a little bit about what Aurora is. So Aurora is a MySQL or Postgres compatible database that's built specifically for the AWS cloud. And it combines the performance and availability of higher end commercial databases, but it's much more cost effective. So it's almost like one of those Amazon recommended products or Amazon brands. And so some of the things that you get out of Aurora is that, again, it's a managed service. And that's one of the huge capabilities. You pay as you go. And then also it's very simple and it's fast. So this is a way of Amazon kind of upping the game here on some open source products and making it more powerful than what you get by default. Okay, let's get into DynamoDB, which we talked about earlier. So what DynamoDB really is it's a fully managed NoSQL database. It has basically unlimited storage. So this is one thing you keep running into with AWS is storage basically goes on forever. And also you can have items that have different attributes and you can do very low latency operations. So this would be great as something where you're constantly throwing both reads and writes into, and it'll have highly scalable reads and writes. And in fact, it's something you can set automatic scaling of reads and writes. And so one of the real benefits of a NoSQL database is it really makes it easier for a developer to develop things because you can have tables that have different attributes in it. You don't have to have a fixed schema. And also those scales can automatically load up and down. And that's part of the automatic scaling capability. So what are some of the key characteristics or core components of DynamoDB? So the core components are really a table, attributes, and items. And so Dynamo also supports two different kinds of primary keys, a partition key and a partition and sort key. And so what is a table? A table is really like a dictionary. If you're familiar with that in Python, it's a collection of data. There's a key and then there's some values. And items are a group of attributes that are uniquely identifiable. And so one of the things that's really important to know about is that everything has to have, when you create a table, it has to have a globally unique ID so that you know how to access each one of those individual records. So a lot of times you could use a library that would automatically create those things for you. And also it's important to know in terms of partitioning what happens. So as the data grows, the table is partitioned by key. And when you do a query by key, you can find items very efficiently. So there's a couple different ways to query Dynamo. The first one is that you can actually just do a key-based lookup, right? So you can look at a globally unique ID, which I was just discussing, or you can actually do a scan. And so if you wanted to grab everything inside of a table, you could actually go through and it would grab all of the records in the table. So lots of different ways to query DynamoDB. So in a nutshell here, what are some of the things to really wrap it up with? is that one, it is actually using SSDs, and that makes it very, very fast. It also supports both a document model, so you can put full documents inside, or it supports a key value model. It also has the ability to do global tables with feature replication. So you can replicate that across different regions. And also, it's really an ideal type of database for things like mobile, for web, and for gaming. And you'll see a lot of companies have shifted over to this. I've definitely used Dynamo a lot because it's much more simple to write code against, and the complexity of a relational database is often just not needed for the kind of problem that you're solving with web, mobile, and gaming. So it's definitely something, especially for data science and machine learning people, to be aware of. Okay, let's move into the final database that we're going to talk about, which is REDSHIFT. And so REDSHIFT has a lot of interesting characteristics about it, including the fact that it's a data warehouse that's much simpler to operate. But it's designed, again, for this petabyte scale data queries. And so let's dig into some of the things that it does. It's a fully managed data warehouse service. You can easily scale it with no downtime, but it does have some interesting characteristics, like the fact that it's a column-based database. So it's really like a giant Excel spreadsheet that you can do huge operations on, but it's able to actually do that by doing those operations in parallel. And also it has built-in encryption. So what are some of the things that you should be aware of in terms of how it operates is that it has a parallel processing built into it. So it's designed to be highly parallel, and that's how it can do petabytes of queries, and it can do it in a very efficient way. It also can pull in data from S3, so you can ingest giant quantities of data and do things with them by using something called REDSHIFT Spectrum. So it has some integrations with S3, which again is a data warehouse solution for Amazon. So what are some of the things that it can do? Well, it has many features on that allow you to manage, monitor, and scale this database. And that's really the advantage of it, is that it's got this deep integration into the Amazon system. And so another thing that's also interesting about REDSHIFT is that it also has the ability to be backwards compatible with SQL clients. And so it has really a lot of capability via these SQL clients to talk to other tools and other services as well. So in a nutshell, what are some of the use cases for REDSHIFT? Why do you care about it? Well, it's a EDW, or an enterprise data warehouse, and it allows you to migrate at a pace that customers are comfortable with, and also experiment without spending a lot of money on a huge data warehouse. And also in terms of the big data, it's a low price point that typically in terms of a big data type operation, this would be a very expensive database like Vertica or something like that. But instead you can focus on using it in a cost-effective way. And because it's a managed service, a lot of the deployment, ongoing maintenance costs are all taken care of for you. So you can focus on querying the data, like the patches of the version of REDSHIFT and things like that. And finally, in terms of use cases, REDSHIFT is a SaaS system, and so you can really focus on doing analytics and adding that, and also not worrying about things like getting specialized hardware and patching your system.